It is July 4th, 2018, and today we celebrate America. But really what we celebrate is America's foundation. We celebrate July 4th, 1776, and the Declaration of Independence. And 1776 might seem like a long time ago, but the truth is, 1776 to 2018 is a blink. It's the blink of an eye. It's a very small moment in human history, a history that is largely defined by oppression, a history that is largely defined by small groups of oligarchs and aristocrats who rule over large groups of people with no basic liberties, no individual freedom. And in 1776, with the Declaration of Independence, the people that had come to the Americas declared that they will not be ruled by a hereditary monarchy, that no groups of people, no individual people have a divine right to rule over others, and that government is not designed to benefit the rulers, but government is supposed to represent the people. And these were revolutionary ideas. But the fight didn't end when the Revolutionary War ended. The fight had just begun. And it still goes on today. Benjamin Franklin famously said, "We gave you a republic, now we'll see if you can keep it." And we're fighting to keep it. And today, so much of that fight is centered around immigration. And when I woke up this morning, I saw a tweet from Kamala Harris, who, interestingly enough, always comes up on the top of my Twitter feed, even though I don't really interact with her, which tells me that the establishment is probably getting her ready for a presidential run. But she tweeted out that the Declaration of Independence was signed by immigrants. So let's review that claim. I mean, imagine this. Imagine this hypothetical scenario. The year is 2018 now. Let's jump ahead to 2020 and think our technology may have gotten a little bit better. Maybe Elon Musk is able to do some amazing things. And Elon Musk announces that he will be taking whoever wants to go to Mars. And that he and this group of 100, 200 people will be flying into outer space and setting up the first ever colony on Mars. And imagine you're one of these people and you sign up for this journey knowing that there's a great chance that you'll die just on the flight there. And that when you get there, there's an even greater chance that you'll be killed by the atmosphere, you'll be killed by who knows. I mean, are there bacteria on Mars that we don't have immunity to? Will you be killed by that? Maybe it's a different planet. Maybe it's not Mars. Maybe there's an indigenous population. Maybe there's wildlife that could kill you. But in spite of all this, you decide you're gonna go. Because you are so turned off by being ruled that you will risk your life to travel across the galaxy. Risk everything. Imminent death. No security, no food, no welfare, no anything. For a chance, just one chance, to do what few people throughout human history have ever done. To live freely. So you get to Mars and you risk everything and you're successful. And you build some infrastructure and you get everything set up. And then the United States government comes shortly behind you. And they start to tell you that you have to do this, that any raw materials that you are able to gather on Mars, that the government owns some of that and you have to give it to them. And any type of income you have or whatever it might be, whatever the financial system is, a large portion of that is owned by the government. The very government you just risked your life to get away from. You risked everything. Well, that was the lead up to 1776. I mean, people in Europe risked everything. They agreed to take a boat ride across unexplored water that only a couple hundred years ago, a blip in time, I mean, people believed the earth was flat and that if you were to go west, you would just fall off the face of the earth. But these people, they didn't care. And for a couple of hundred years, very brave people who weren't immigrants, they were settlers. They traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, across waters which there was over a 50% chance that they would die just on the journey. Of disease, of poor navigation, of shipwreck, whatever it might be. The odds were they were going to die on just the journey to the Americas. But they took the journey anyway because they yearned to be free. They yearned to get away from the hereditary monarchy in England or wherever they were in Europe. And then they got to the Americas where, if they made it there alive, there was just as good a chance that they would die, that the wildlife would kill them, that new disease would kill them, that starvation from lack of infrastructure would kill them, that not having any government there to protect them, so to speak, would kill them. They didn't care. These people yearned to be free. That the native populations in America would fight back against their arrival. And don't get me wrong, those Native Americans, they were right to fight back. They had a right to protect their property, to protect their land. But the point is that these people that Kamala Harris is calling immigrants, they weren't immigrants. They were settlers who risked everything to get away from government. And then they got here and they set up the Americas, and the government said, you have to pay for this, or the government of England, the hereditary monarchy, said, you have to pay for this, you have to pay for that. They said, we're going to tax you and you're not even going to get representatives, that we could have soldiers in your house and we're going to take away your weapons. And then on now, the shot heard around the world at Lexington and Concord, these settlers, not immigrants, said, enough is enough. These people who risked everything, who yearned to be free, said, we didn't risk everything so that the government could take what's ours and tell us what to do. You see, America's founders, they were settlers, and it was this very spirit of yearning to be free, of getting away from government, which made America possible in the first place. People like George Washington, like Benjamin Franklin, these people grew up on the frontier. They grew up on largely unsettled land, on unexplored wilderness. I mean, George Washington, living on the edge of unexplored wilderness with hostile natives right in his backyard when he was just a teenager, wrote the Rules for Civility, in which he talked about what it meant to be noble, what it meant to be free. And all of these amazing people who had settled this new land, who grew up away from government on the edge of wilderness, understood what it meant to be truly free. And that's why they were so receptive to these ideas of natural rights, that we are endowed by God with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That you're born alive, and if anyone tries to take your life, you have a right to defend it. That you're born with certain liberties, among these the ability to speak, the ability to meet up with your friends, to assemble and talk about whatever you want, the right to protest, to let anyone know that you have a problem with what they're doing, that your words aren't violating any of their rights, so who are they to tell you you can't do that? A right to basic liberty, which means no one could just lock you in a prison cell without having a fair trial. A right to not be ruled by anyone else, to be represented but not ruled. So because of that, you had basic rights to privacy. And of course, with a right to life, with a right to liberty, comes a natural right to defend yourself against anyone that wishes to take that liberty away. And that's why they came up with the right to bear arms. It's not so much as a right to have guns as a right to protect yourself. And guns are the best way to protect yourself. And if the weaponry gets better, then we'll have a right to that weaponry, because we'll have a right to protect ourselves against anyone who takes away our liberty, anyone who takes away our freedom. So America's founding is not defined by immigration. It's defined by settlement, by people who risked everything, who risked their life, who gave up all basic security, so to speak, because they truly did yearn to be free. But Ben Franklin was right. They gave us a republic, and, you know, he said, we'll see if you can keep it. I mean, Thomas Jefferson said that we'd essentially have to fight a revolution every 15 years to keep our freedom, and he was probably right, because as government has expanded, it's come up with more complex ways to gain wealth and power, and among the erosion of the Constitution, of our basic liberties, using fear tactics, they've also came up with this narrative that America wasn't a nation of settlers, America was a nation of immigrants. And what they do is they use these open borders to bribe people to come from the third world with a welfare state, which on its own is a violation of property rights. And they tell people, you come from South America illegally, and we'll rob the American population, we'll take away their money and redistribute that wealth to you. And all you have to do is come here and vote for bigger government. Vote for the expansion of the welfare state, and vote for government that has every intention of eroding liberty, eroding freedom of speech, eroding the right to bear arms, eroding the rights to privacy and fair trial. They are using this false narrative that America is a nation of immigrants to take away our basic freedoms and liberties, when in fact America is a nation of settlers defined by people who detested government and government expansion, who didn't want so-called security from government, but truly did yearn to be free. And once you understand these foundations, you understand that we have a right to defend the culture that gave us all of that freedom. And if they're using immigration to erode our basic liberties, to erode our property rights, then we have every right to fight back against it, because we are mavericks. We are descendants of the people who risked everything, yearning to be free. So on this July 4th, 2018, spread the message of July 4th, 1776. That we are endowed by God with certain inalienable rights. Among those rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.